The art of gardening. Dating back to 35,000 BCE, there has been archaeological sites that indicate that Homo sapiens, at the end of the Paleolithic period, had knowledge of many plants derived from food gathering techniques. Gardening from the beginning of time has been seen as the woman's job. For instance, from the beginning of civilization, men and women had different daily roles. The men were hunters, and the women and children were the gatherers. Women were to plant and gather the food, while men were out hunting, fish, and other wild game. Women worked in and around the house, reared the children, prepared the food, and created pottery. They also worked in the fields, tilling the land. Early explorers noted that the men considered an easy leisure lifestyle by hunting deer, fishing, and building homes for their families. Gardening across genders. Men have generally participated less in gardening because typically throughout history, men have spent less time at home than the women. From the gains and gaps readings, the division between what is work and what is leisure is also less clear for women compared to men. This merging of work and leisure occurs because home is the main place of work for many women, and much of the time spent at home is a combination of work and leisure. Gardening is seen as a leisure activity. My theory for the reason why gardening is not a particular choice of leisure activity for men in their free time is because there is so many more masculine leisure activities and sports that men have steered towards to participate in. Gardening is not seen as a masculine leisure activity due to its nature. Planting flowers and tending to a garden is not exciting as fishing, shooting, or playing a variety of active sports. Men tend to enjoy more active and exciting leisure activities during their free time. Traditional ideals of gardening. Media has had some effect on the art of gardening in terms of how men and women view it as a type of leisure activity. More women than men are portrayed growing gardens and planting flowers in magazines than men. If you go through magazines such as The Home and Garden, you will see advertisements and entries that cater to women instead of men. The media has labeled women as the gardeners of our time, rather than displaying men gardening in magazines. I personally never really took up gardening because I love playing sports. I like leisure activities that are more active and upbeat rather than calm and relaxing. Although I love being outdoors, I never found much of a passion to plant flowers and tend to garden like many people do. I never really felt constrained by stereotypes about whether it's a women's leisure activity or an activity only women take part in. If I love doing something, I will do it no matter what norms or stereotypes are placed upon it. Sexism in relation to gardening. From the Gendered Nature of Leisure Journal by Susan Shaw, she explains leisure activities are stereotyped by media, such as advertisements on the internet, television commercials, and through magazines. Our generation has kept up with the norms of the past, displaying and catering to stereotypical gender beliefs with regard to leisure activities that fit the norms of gender. Women are portrayed through the internet and media and associated with anything that surrounds the home. Since most gardening takes place around the home, women are more likely displayed or catered to any aspect of gardening rather than men. I decided to ask a good friend who enjoys helping her mother garden from time to time on how she felt about gardening being a woman's leisure activity rather than a men's. Her response was, from the beginning, women have been viewed as the housewife and doing domestic activities around the home. Stereotypes have emerged over the years and haven't quite left our society in terms of how our society still views gardening and chores around the home. Gardening today. In today's society, more and more men are gardening. It is no longer seen as a woman's job or women's leisure activity. Women who choose to garden as their leisure activity find it very relaxing and quite peaceful. The CDCG expresses that gardening can have a multitude of healing powers on one's body. It reduces stress, it's a great source of exercise, and it's a great leisure activity to participate in. From our class readings, women are more likely to participate in gardening than men due to lack of masculinity and overall satisfaction. I believe that throughout the years, more and more men have taken up gardening due to the satisfaction and relaxation that comes with gardening. Here are some quick tips on growing a tomato plant from seed. Use a good sized pot or container, preferably smaller than 7 inches in diameter. You want to use fresh soil. You want to plant the seeds an inch or so below the soil and lightly cover with moist soil without compacting it. Make sure to place the pot in a sunny spot throughout the day. Water once a day with warm water to advance the growth. Here's a video on how to grow some tomatoes from seed.
Gardening Made Easy with Thompson and Morgan. Homegrown tomatoes taste delicious, and growing them for yourself couldn't be easier. Today, I'm going to look at sowing seed. This variety is called Sun Gold. I'm going to sow them into this wide pot using fresh multi-purpose compost. Fill the pot and firm the surface gently so it's flat. Then water it lightly to settle it. Open up the seed packet and tip the seeds into your hand. Space them evenly over the surface and don't sow too many so that they've got room to grow. Sprinkle a thin layer of compost over the seeds to cover them. Write a label for the pot. Within a few weeks, you should have sturdy seedlings. Once you see the true leaves emerging, they're ready to be potted up. I'm going to put these into pots of multi-purpose compost. Use a dibber or a pencil to lift the seedling gently out of the pot, making sure you hold it by a leaf. If the leaf tears, it won't matter, but if you bruise the stem, the plant may die. Tease the root very carefully out of the compost. They can be quite long already. Transfer it into a hole with the new compost and firm it slightly. Do the same for each seedling, and water them gently to settle them in. After a few weeks growing on your windowsill, your tomato will be big enough to go into a pot of its own. And it can go into a grow bag. You normally fit 3 into a grow bag, or one of these special tomato pots from Thompson & Morgan. The Thompson & Morgan tomato pots are made of a strong woven material and can be reused year after year. Fill the pot with multi-purpose compost to around halfway. Now, take the plant and carefully remove the pot from the base of the plant so you don't damage it. Place it in the container and add more compost, firming it gently. Don't fill the container to the top just yet, because tomatoes can root from the base of the stem, and by adding more compost later on, you'll increase the rooting area, giving you a healthier plant. Water it well to settle the compost. As the tomato plant grows, it'll form trusses of flowers up the stem. In order to allow all the fruit to ripen, restrict each plant to 4 or 5 trusses, then stop the plant by removing the growing tip. Side shoots, like this one, need removing or they will take energy away from the fruit. Keep tying the plant to a cane as it grows, or it may fall over or become damaged in the wind. When the tomatoes are ripe, pick them by pulling the fruit away from the stem. Be careful not to knock any of the other tomatoes off. By the middle of summer, you should have beautiful, healthy, ripe tomatoes, bursting with flavour and ready to eat.
I began this cross-gender leisure activity by deciding I was going to do some form of gardening. My first step was to do some research on the materials I would need and the steps to planting flowers or vegetables. I decided I was going to grow tomatoes from seed. This leisure activity itself was not challenging once I figured out the things that I need to get done. The real challenge was finding time to accomplish the tasks necessary to grow the tomatoes. While participating, I felt relaxed, surprisingly. In gardening, I gained an insight on why so many people nowadays garden to relax and enjoy being outside. After learning how to grow tomatoes and taking part in gardening, I have to say I will probably plant more vegetables and garden more often in my free time. From participating in gardening as a leisure activity, I found it quite relaxing. From LondonAncestor.com website, where they describe the benefits of gardening and the views people share about gardening, they explain how gardening can be quite the stress reducer and can be quite calming. They also explain how gardening can be a good outlet for creativity and exercise. The one aspect of gardening that can be quite hard is to find time. LondonAncestor.com also explains how it can be quite time-consuming. Gardens and vegetables need constant attention and supervision. Plants are just as much alive as we are and need care if you want them to grow properly.